guys talking Rush. Two guys talking Rush. Two guys talking Rush. Two guys talking Rush. Two guys.
And now, get ready for the Two Guys Talking Rush podcast with your hosts, John Kane and Dan Buxton.
Hey folks, this is John Kane and Dan Buxton with show number 3 of Two Guys Talking Rush. Wow, we've made it to 3.
The number of shows has now exceeded the number of guys.
This is true.
We have more shows than guys now. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Maybe it'll go beyond that.
Who knows?
And last show we mentioned the only thing that would break up a third show is egos, and so far no one has an ego. I haven't had my manager contact you for negotiations at any point.
My lawyer has not done anything.
Yeah, he just left me a voicemail, but I'll get to it. And the contract's in the mail. But it's all good. And so Dan, how's your week been?
It's been good. I have to say doing this show has been like the highlight of my entire summer. And I do want to say thank you also to, those of you out there who started listening to us, and have given us some good feedback initially, that sort of thing. It really does matter. And we really do. I would love to be one of those people who's like, we're just going to do what we want. We don't care if nobody likes it. But we do care. And the fact that we're getting some, positive response right off the bat, that means a lot. And I'm really grateful to everyone who's tuned in so far. So thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I've heard from several listeners. One person chimed in or sent me an email and said, "Hey, love what you're doing. Keep it going." And I appreciate even just one line. Just one sentence is so meaningful. And you wonder sometimes if people are listening and if people are liking the content and what you're talking about. And I think what shows through is that we're true Rush fans. That's the foundation of this whole thing. We did this because we're Rush fans and we want to talk about Rush and we want to include other people in the conversation. And during a pandemic, it's hard to be in those social settings, obviously. And now with the band, and sadly with Neil's passing, we don't have these kind of connections to look forward to, like at a parking lot of a venue or a show, right?
Stores.
Record store. Yeah, what's that? Record stores.
Yeah, what's a record store?
I know. Well, off the cuff here, it's been very hot where I live. I live in New Hampshire, near the ocean, near the seacoast, but it's still been excruciatingly hot. How about you?
Oh, I'm in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
It's basically like if you've ever been to Florida, it's just humid and awful, and you just like cry to the heavens, when will this be over? I know.
We were just talking about how we don't respond well to the heat. I move much slower. Yeah. I drip a lot more, and it's just a terrible situation to be in. So Norway,
that's where we should be.
Those
are our people.
Yeah, exactly. Those are our people, exactly. I don't know how folks do it in Florida, man. I couldn't handle it. There it is. Nothing.
Problem.
Yeah. Nothing against those in Florida. Some good rock and roll came out of Florida, obviously.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, anyway, I want to reach out to the fans again because we are always looking for feedback, good and bad, and also we want to learn about what fans want to hear as far as content. If there's subjects that you feel other podcasts or other articles are not covering, other journalists are not covering about Rush, let us know and we'll do the homework and we'll make it a topic of conversation for Two Guys Talking Rush, and we'd be happy to do that. This show is for the fans, by two big Rush fans here. So also we're looking for Rush super fans for future shows. We want to honor those fans who just have gone above and beyond the call of duty for Rush. You know, I've seen the band over 100 times, have maybe someone who has the biggest Rush collection of rare and vintage items, maybe those who know the band, are close to the band, who only by way of nagging the band so much that they've ended up with backstage passes. Just that super fan, you know. So if you're a Rush super fan, please go to twoguystalkingrush.com or email us at twoguystalkingrush@gmail.com.
Also, if you're an extreme Rush fan who has not seen 100 shows but has some interesting, crazy story that you must share,
Love it.
That's really unusual, we definitely want that.
Totally.
So, like, if you ever, I don't know, like, stowed away in the baggage compartment of the tour bus or something, we want that. We want to talk to you.
I want to hear about. Also, I want to hear from older Rush fans. You know, the ones that were there in the '70s. You know, the early '70s on the 2112 tour. You know, the Hemispheres tour. Within my age group. For some reason, I'm able to connect with people within my relative age group, but I very rarely get to talk to a real older kind of like troubadour, the older Rush fans, you know, that were there at the beginning. And those people really interest me.
I mean, we're Gen X.
We are Gen
X. I mean, what Rush was doing around the time when I discovered them in the kind of like, you know, Moving Pictures, Signals, Grace Under Pressure period. You know, there's a whole decade before that, which is probably my favorite era of the band. But I was just too young. You know, I might have been 7 years old when 2112 came out. So yeah, we're definitely interested. You know, anyone whose perspective is one of seeing this band when they just started, or were starting to get bigger, or you know, before they were what they are now, or what they have been. Sorry. We're definitely interested in hearing that.
Yep. And also if anybody knows someone that's not a Rush fan, that is so emphatic about their hatred and disdain towards Rush, we're open to talking to those people and convincing them that Rush is the best band in the world. I'm just joking, but really, it's nice to hear why people don't like Rush. You know,
I'm actually open to that. I would be totally into
someone's
having a hater on the show.
Yeah, well, we want haters. We want some.
Come and get us.
If you know someone that hates Rush enough to be on the show and talk about it, please contact us. So you can hear our podcast on TuneIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Simplecast, and others. Just search for Two Guys Talking Rush. Last week we had Martin Popoff on the show, and that was awesome. I think that we had a lot of downloads for that show, and rightly so. I was in another YouTube wormhole last night, and Martin is just all over YouTube with regard to his commentary on heavy metal and rock and roll, and he's super smart about it. And I can see why he's the go-to guy for this sort of knowledge base. One show which I love and I can't not get enough of is the best albums of 1984, the best heavy metal albums of 1980, and just love that stuff. I eat it up, you know. And you learn a lot about some albums that really didn't make the cut or were in the background, but were just as influential. And that turns me on to new music and uncovering bands that I never really got into, you know, that were also influential, like Man of War. I forgot, because I guess there was a progressive power metal episode, and they were of course power metal, high vocals, well orchestrated classical style playing. You know, Halloween of course is on that throne, but someone said, well, what about Man of War? And then I forgot about Man of War and their crazy album covers. You know, of course, this all goes back to Rush at some point. We'll meet at those crossroads. But Hail to England was one that now I need to like revisit that. So
Yeah.
that's just a good example of Popoff's opening a can of worms influence on me. And his book Anthem Rush in the 70s is a 354-page deep dive into the origins of Rush and their first batch of classic records. It's part of a trilogy. I recommend everyone to buy it and to keep an eye out for what Martin Popoff does, because he's pumping out books like every day. It's incredible. Yeah. And for us, where we have a few books already published, it's an honor to share the shelf of a bookstore. That was funny when I was first published, and I don't know how you feel about it, but when my books were first published, we can plug our books. This is our show.
Oh, yeah.
My book, The Last Seat in the House, The Story of Hanley Sound, a historic overview on the development of rock and roll production beginning in the 1950s. When that book came out, it was on the shelf next to one of Popoff's books, or near it. And I felt so happy to be, or just so proud to say, wow, because I always go to bookshelves and look for rock books. I'm a rock and roll fan. So it just felt so good to be up there. And of course, my Woodstock book and your Woodstock book were together. And
I have like books about heavy metal out too, and like I did the Encyclopedia of Heavy Metal.
Yeah.
And I've seen it on the shelf next to Popoff, next to Chuck Eddy, people like that.
Yes.
And I really don't feel like I'm in competition with those people.
No
it's
way.
Like I feel like we're all sort of like part of digging into something deeper.
Yes.
And like Chuck Eddy specifically has like a very different perspective on what metal is than mine.
Right.
But I think that's necessary, and I think that's important. And the music keeps changing and keeps being interesting to new generations of people.
Right.
And I think it's about the noise we all make together. It's about the discussion that we all make together. And again, that gets back to Rush.
Exactly.
If I had a Rush book purely about Rush and it was up next to someone else's, that would make me happy. I would be like, oh, good. Everyone wants to talk about this.
Right.
And you and I had the experience also of sitting under a tent at Bethel Woods, each of us selling Woodstock books. And I didn't feel any competition there either. It's just
Not at all.
We all want to celebrate this and we all want to talk about this.
It's a real nice, it's an exclusive club because you've written about a niche topic.
Yeah.
However, we are at the origins of all this is that we're fans of a subject matter that we feel we wanted to devote time and effort into creating without thinking about, not driven by money or anything like that, but driven by a passion to have our voices heard about our opinions on a subject. And that's important stuff. I mean, the world needs people like that. Sometimes I feel obligated because I want to tell a story that I feel is true and meaningful. And the problem is that if you're not I don't know if Popoff has a research team. I imagine he must have someone or something, but David McCullough does, but it would be a lot easier if you did have a research team. But that's the time. It's not the writing that's the time consumption. It's the research.
Yeah.
On another note, go to martinpopoff.com and view his impressive catalog of books. Dan, what's your website? Do you have a website for your books?
No, it's just the Amazon author page.
Your Amazon author page? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. You can go to pilgrimsofwoodstock.com for me and thelastseatinthehouse.com for my other work. And I do have an Amazon author page. A shout out to rushradio.org. I've been turning Dan on to rushradio.org. I mean, we have Rush albums coming out the wazoo, but I put on rushradio.org because it's nice to, like with bands like Zeppelin, I've taken a break from. It's because there's 80 something songs in their catalog. How many more times can you listen to the same song over and over and over and over? You got to take a break, a sabbatical, so to speak. And I've done that sometimes with Rush. That way I can revisit it. But now that Neil's gone, I've been listening to Rush constantly, and I don't know what that's about. Maybe it's a new appreciation for their vast catalog, and how much of it is so good, how much of it is so exemplary. But Rush Radio does a fine job of mixing up songs, playing live cuts, and without me needing to flip over an album or put on a 6 CD disc changer and deal with all that. Put on Rush Radio, go to rushradio.org. It's on TuneIn, on the TuneIn app. It's awesome. Also a shout out to Why Not. Their music can be heard in our intro. And it was Geddy Lee's birthday this week, 67 years old. Wow.
Years young. He's 67
years young.
Sorry.
Whoops. Sorry. Gary Lee Weinrib, right?
Yes.
Am I saying it right? Yes. Born July 29th, 1953, in Willowdale, North York, Toronto, Ontario. What a legendary man. And an incredible bass player. I think everybody who picks up a bass would aspire, anybody that loves rock and roll would aspire to be at the level of Geddy Lee. Or I know for me it was either Geddy Lee or Steve Harris from Iron Maiden. I just wanted to be as good.
Geezer Butler.
Yeah, and Geezer, of course. Yeah, Geezer's incredible. Yeah.
I have to also shout out for Chris Squire from Yes.
Oh, yes, yeah.
A beast. Oh, and Geddy subbed for him when they got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
That was amazing.
Yeah, my God, that man is a monster. But yeah, no, Geddy. In my heavy metal book, I listed him as the greatest bass player in the top 10. You can't beat him, and he has this completely unique sound, never copied by anybody successfully that I'm aware of.
Yeah,
total inspiration to anyone who picks up that instrument. And I sit there and I listen. I've played bass, but it was always hard, with those big strings, and I struggled with it a lot. Then you listen to him, and it's like it's almost like he doesn't even notice that he's playing. Like he's making some coffee at the same time or something like that.
Yeah, he was a big dude. He was a big dude too, wasn't he? Really tall. He was a tall guy, right? No. Squire.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I that's the reason why I played bass in the beginning, because I was just my fingers are too fat. They're like sausages, so I couldn't put them over the delicate string. I could never be a delicate, what's that guy that used to sell guitars on QVC? With the hat and the bandana. I know exactly. Roy Clark. No. This guy looked like Zorro almost. Yeah, I kid. Anyway, so this day in Rush history, very few things happened. I'm surprised. I'm sure more happened. But in 1957, a system of radar stations designed to detect Soviet bombers approaching North America, known as the Distant Early Warning Line, went into operation. Well. 2013, Rush played USANA Amphitheater in Salt Lake City, Utah on the Clockwork Angels tour. 2017, Alex Lifeson appeared on Marco Miniman's Borrego. I've never seen that. I don't know that. You saw the Clockwork Angels tour, right? Mm-hmm. Did you go to that tour? So here's Clockwork Angels then was R40, right? And then the R40 ended it for the band, correct? It was Clockwork Angels, then R40. R40, yeah. Did you see R40? I did not. No, you did not. And to my eternal chagrin. Yeah, that was incredible. I think what was more incredible about that, Clockwork Angels was incredible too. Every Rush show was incredible, but... Is there a bad Rush show? Does that exist? Is there such a thing? I don't know. Even if it's an era of the band you don't like, that is the best sounding show you'll ever see. Right. And if you go to stadium shows, most of the time getting the sound right, is a lot of it just is all up here and you lose a lot of it. But yeah, those were perfect. Yeah, but I should probably save that for our guest. Yeah, I was going to say, now that you mentioned sound, our show today features a very special guest. As always, we're working very hard to introduce special guests to the show. And, when thinking of sound reinforcement and sound quality of concerts, this elevates a band. If the sound's bad, it's not a good time for anybody. And I've been to several shows where the sound has been horrific. My book, The Last Seat in the House, I'm not trying to plug it right now, but it does cover the history of sound reinforcement. So I have some foundational knowledge base through my research from what good sound is, what bad sound is, and who these kind of prolific leaders are in the area or arena of sound reinforcement. Something we all take for granted, something I took for granted before I even began my 10-year-long journey in this research. But we have FOH engineer on the show today, who was engineer for Rush on several tours, Robert Scovill. He's a 35-year veteran of professional concert sound and recording. He's mixed over 3,500 events in his career. His engineering and production talents have been enlisted by a veritable who's who of marquee music acts, including Tom Petty, he was with Tom Petty for a while, in the Heartbreakers, Matchbox 20, your favorite band, Dan. I'm just kidding.
Oh, yes.
Jackson Browne, Def Leppard, Prince, and Rush, specifically on the Presto, Roll the Bones, Counterparts, and Test for Echo tours. He has a huge body of live sound work and recording work. I think he was on the different stages, recorded the different stages live album. So that's some interesting stuff. His awards for technical and creative achievement and sound reinforcement include 3 Parnelli Awards, the elite of the elite, in his field for Live Sound Engineer of the Year. At the time of his NAMM Oral History interview, Robert held the position of Senior Specialist for Live Sound and Recording Products for Avid Technologies and served as a principal designer and contributor for their venue line of live sound consoles. He's regarded as the pioneer of virtual sound check and multi-track archiving workflows for live sound. He's a legend. I want to welcome Robert Scovill into the show, and let's get him in here.
Howdy, gents.
Hey,
how you doing?
Robert, nice to finally see you in a virtual person.
Yeah.
Robert, this is Dan Buxton, my co-host and author.
Hi, Dan.
Hi. Thank you very much for being on the show. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. No problem.
So where are you now? And you're in your workspace, your man cave? What's behind you?
It's my office.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Robert, we met via indirectly through Larry Milburn. Larry is the host of Roadie Free Radio, an awesome guy. You were on one of his podcasts, as I was with Bill Hanley. I want to ask you, how did you get into the business? I've already introduced you. So how did you get into the business of sound reinforcement? Take us back to maybe to a younger Robert Scovill. I mean, what were you like as a kid? How did you get into this whole world of sound reinforcement and sound?
Yeah, I mean, I probably like a lot of guys that get in, certainly into the sound side of it. I mean, I started out as a musician, or started out wanting to be a musician, I should say. Probably up until the time I was, 12, 13 years old. I've told this story many times, so I'll just give you the Reader's Digest version of it again. At that age, and certainly at that time, this was probably around 1973, 74, somewhere around there. We're only a few years removed from Woodstock, So,
right.
I had been aware of all that. And, by the time I entered high school, I because I was kind of a jock in high school as well as being a musician, I had that kind of weird combination thing going on. I played in 2 different kind of social circles in school, but athletically I hung out with a lot of older guys, and all of these guys liked to go to concerts, and my parents were liberal enough, ironically, to let me go to concerts with them at the age of 13. So at this point, I was going to see shows pretty regularly. Concert tickets were cheap. I could go collect bottles and turn them in, for nickels at a time, and make enough for a concert ticket,
Right.
We would go to a lot of shows, and I think I was probably around, I may have been 14. I might have been a sophomore by the time this came around. I don't remember exactly, but I got tickets to go see Supertramp. It was Crime of the Century tour.
Wow.
I remember it very well. We went to see him at the Ambassador Theater in St. Louis. Great room there. And, I had been playing in bands, nothing meaningful in any way, just guys trying to get together to get something together. And at that age, I had no idea what a PA system was. I had no idea what a mixer was, anything,
Right.
As far as I knew, just guys got up on stage and played, and we went and paid to go see that,
Right.
So, we had pretty good seats. I mean, I was down on the floor seats in the theater, and the show was going on. And I remember, even at that age, just kind of having this epiphany of, man, this sounds unbelievable. Like, I couldn't wrap my head around why it sounded so good. I mean, it sounded so much better than any concert I had been to at that point. You know, I just remember thinking, wow, what's happening here? You know, but kind of put it away and just, you know, enjoyed the show. I mean, I loved Supertramp at that point in their career for sure.
Yeah.
And as we were walking out of the building, I mean, you know, walking up the aisle, and I walked right past the front of house position, and it just stopped me in my tracks. I just remember thinking, what is this? You know, I mean, it just looked like I had walked into a NASA control room, you know, and I was standing there looking at it, and the guy who was mixing, who I'll reveal here in a second,
Yes.
looked at me, you know, and he saw something in my eyes. I swear, he saw something in my eyes, because he kind of goes, "You want to come up and have a look around?"
Yeah.
And I was, you know, luckily I was, you know, wasn't too shy and was smart enough to say, "Hell yes, I do. Let's go," you know. So he took me up and walked me around and kind of showed me just the basic concept, you know. And I mean, I was in hook, line, and sinker.
Wow.
From that moment. I knew I wanted to get into that side of the business, whether it was in the studio or live, you know, whatever. Now, the coolest part of this story, and I'm so glad I can tell this story, because Larry's show, when I told this story, was the impetus behind this happening. So Larry does his show, and I posted a link to it or whatever. And a really good friend of mine who I toured with in the mid 80s with Laurie Anderson, Facebook messengers me back and he goes, "I live right down the street from Russell Pope. I'm going to go tell him this story." Wow. And it was Russell Pope mixing that show.
Wow.
And he remembered the incident.
Wow.
Now, I'm getting chills on my arms just telling. I get them every time I tell this story because it's so weird. And I called Teddy out. I said, he doesn't remember this story. I was like 40 years ago. I was like, he doesn't remember this. So he connects us on Facebook, and he totally remembered the story. Totally remembered it. And I was just blown away by it. And you know, he didn't know who I was pre the story, but after he found out that I was a sound engineer, you know, he kind of went and did some digging on my work, and we just kind of had this really kind of cool bonding moment. You know, it was just an amazing moment. So,
just for the benefit of some of the people listening who might not know, can you just quickly explain who Russell Pope is, because some of them might not know?
Yeah, he was their live sound engineer and their recording engineer for, you know, a lot of their work, or he certainly contributed to the recording of their records, etc. I mean, he was brilliant. He was really a brilliant guy. And I had always been amazed at the sound of those records to begin with, and then to go to the show and have it kind of be comparable. It was, you know, it was just an amazing circle of events there, you know. So
yeah,
it was amazing. I feel very blessed to have had that moment in my life that kind of.
That's wonderful.
And I've said this many times as well. You know, what it put into me, without question, was, whenever I'm at a show, and you know, I have plenty of people that will back me up on this. Whenever I'm at a show and somebody comes up and says, "Wow, what does this do?" Come on up, let's have a look. And I'm going to show you what this does. You know, I just am always willing to let somebody up there and see it. You know, and understand.
When you see like a young person, younger than you, getting that first initial like little glimmer in their eye.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what's that? What's that all about? What's that thing back there that I'm not supposed to see? You know, because I mean, a lot of people, I think, don't even notice, you know, where the mixing board is, where the guy who's running it. You know, that's kind of, I think, considered like it's not part of the show. People go there to see the show. They don't notice that stuff. But there's a certain type of person who's wired in that way. Like they're not interested in what they're being shown. It's like, what's that thing back there, you know? And you know, when you see someone getting that moment, and you know, the look on their face and everything, it's memorable for sure.
Well, you know, and ironically now, I don't know if this happened back in the time that I went through this, but ironically now, we're kind of at the opposite end of that spectrum in some regards too, where I call it, because of the YouTube era, I have guys come up regularly that think they know everything about what I do.
Right.
And as the conversation unfolds, you realize, wow, where did you get this information? I mean, this is so wrong what you're saying here.
Yeah.
It's not even close to being right. How do you have this perception here? So there's that as well. There's a lot of, dare I say it, in 2020, there's a lot of misinformation out there as well.
Oh, sure. When you had that encounter as a young person, and this was your kind of lead into the field and interest into the field of sound reinforcement or being a sound engineer, the business was still relatively young. It wasn't, people don't realize this, and I've written about this, as you know, is that this is just a 60-year-old kind of idea that quality sound should be and can be delivered in a live concert setting, and that the technology behind it and its deployment is still relatively new. It hasn't been around 100 years.
Well, the technology and the techniques.
Exactly.
Are still developing for sure.
That's right. It's still an evolving thing. Hopefully.
That's kind of why I brought that up. I was like, well, in 74, we were only 5 years away from Woodstock.
Amazing. That's right.
So to have that kind of experience where sound quality was the thing that caught my attention, that was, I look back on that now and think, wow, yeah, that's actually kind of interesting, to have that kind of thought process. But, kind of getting back to what you were talking about, it being a young industry, certainly at that point, I remember leaving that show and just being on fire to find out information about that, and just ran into an absolute brick wall. It was like, I couldn't find out anything about it. Right. I think the best I came up with, I'm pretty sure it was in Hit Parader magazine. They had done a thing on the band Kansas. Although that was later. No, that can't be right. But I remember coming up with kind of something in a magazine, or maybe it was from an album cover. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
It was showing that kind of equipment. And I remember going to my high school counselor and saying, this is what I want to do. Amazing. And him kind of looking at me with this blank eye stare.
So did that take you on a road to electronics and interest in electronics? And
it did. It
did. Yeah.
Yeah. And well, his response to it at the time was, he had no idea what any of that was. But his response, I'll never forget it, was, well, that looks technical. Let's just have you go in the Army. They'll pay for your education. Yeah, I reacted just like you did, Daniel. I was like,
no thanks.
100% not interested. Yeah.
Have you seen my hair?
That's amazing. So what happens after that? You actually get a learning in the trades. You end up.
Well, again, we just had no idea, and what we both landed on was going to an electronics school, a school focused on electronics and getting a double E in electronic design and engineering. I just figured, well, okay, it's got to be electronics.
Right.
So I signed up for one of these technical institutes in Kansas City and was there for a pretty good chunk of time. I was probably about, I don't know. I entered early. I was there at 17, and I was probably maybe 12 weeks away from my bachelor's degree when I had the opportunity to leave and go on a tour. So,
wow.
And I got introduced to actual sound reinforcement through nothing to do with the school. It didn't take me very long to be at the school to kind of realize, okay, well, this has nothing to do with pro audio and recording and stuff. Now that said, and I want to always make this point, it was the best thing I had ever done because it gave me the language. I understood the technical language inside and out, really, but I had no practical execution of it at all. And I was going to school in Kansas City at the time, and there was a company there, regional kind of powerhouse sound company there called Superior Sound, and they'd put on these big free parks concerts, or they didn't put them on, but they were the sound company for it, in this area called Brush Creek in Kansas City, and you might have 10,000-15,000 people down there on a weekend for a free concert. Everything from the Kansas City Philharmonic to Pat Metheny to Blood, Sweat, and Tears, you name it. It was coming in there weekly. Yeah. So they were always looking for help on these shows because, they didn't regularly do shows that size, so they needed support staff for those shows. And they posted a flyer at the college just thinking, well, we'll go to the electronics school, see if we can get any guys that, can help us out. And I jumped right on it, and I was like, yeah, I'll be there. So I went down the first week and fell flat on my face. I was horrible. I was absolutely horrible because I had, I had all the electronics background, but I had no practical experience with any of it. I think I blew up a couple of amplifiers, all kinds of stuff. It was honestly a really bad day for me.
You can have all the schooling and theory in the world, but until you start getting your hands dirty, it kind of doesn't really matter. And you have to have those first couple of experiences of just disaster.
Yeah,
But you really learn from that too, you know.
Yeah, you can't ever equate education and experience. Those are
No.
two different things. You know?
Plus, what
Very,
sort of
very
formal training was there? Become a sound engineer for rock and roll. That probably didn't exist. It was
Oh,
still,
that wouldn't have even been in someone's mind
exactly,
at that point, you know?
right.
I mean,
learn to become a rock and roll sound engineer.
I mean, we have that today, you know.
Yeah,
we have
exactly.
road schools today,
Yeah,
but
right.
you know, certainly not then.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
there was no
So
correspondence
I kept going.
course at the time.
I ended up
Sorry.
working that whole summer, basically for free, you know. But I was again kind of smart enough to kind of look at that and go, "This is my path in right here. I see it.
And then you never look back. So flash forward, you kind of worked your way up, I suppose, right? From that time on, learning the field by way of being in the mix of it all. And then what? You end up at Electric Tech. Electric Tech is where you were doing the Rush tours, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so
I started with
go ahead.
Electrotech, and I mean, you can really kind of easily connect the dots.
Yeah.
There was a band in Kansas City that had just broke pretty big, and their first record had done really, really well. And they were looking for staff to go out and tour with them, and they had used Superior Sound on a couple of shows, and I got to meet their crew, etc., and was able to get into that camp. And that's part of the reason I left school, was to go on tour with them. And we were out, I mean, they were big enough that we were out opening for all kinds of people. We were opening for Jefferson Starship, you know, Journey, ZZ Top. I mean, you know, just a host of really, really big acts, and doing a lot of shows on our own. So it was an incredible experience. I mean, by the end of that first year of touring with those guys, I had met every sound company. You know, it was certainly my first experiences with ultrasound, you know, with Meyer and, you know, Don Pearson and all those guys. I mean, I mean, when you're around those kind of people, I mean,
Wizards.
yeah, I mean, you're going to get it. You know, you're either going to get it or you're not going to make it in the business. You know.
Yeah.
So. And I got to give those guys credit. I mean, and they didn't have to be, but they really took me under their wing. I mean, and not overtly, but they never. If I ever had a question, they would sit and talk forever about it.
Yeah.
And show you what they were doing, et cetera. They were very open about it, and that made all the difference in the world. And as it turns out, that's kind of where I met the Electrotech guys as well. We were opening for Cheap Trick, I think, and that's where I met Mick Whelan, Ted Leamy, Sam Buckner, all those heavyweight guys from Electrotech at that era. So, you know, I did a couple of more tours, kind of, you know, shooting star tours and records. I was helping them out on the records as well, just as an assistant. And then kind of pulled the ripcord from Kansas City and moved to Los Angeles and lived with a couple of guys from Electrotech around that must have been around 82, 83. So, I mean, I was still very young. I was a pup, man.
Yeah.
Woo.
Yeah. I think I saw a picture of you. You had you kind of had long hair. Yeah.
I know. It's hard to believe now.
Well, we all had long hair, I think, between us both, you know, all of us. Nothing you could do about that. But so what happens? You get assigned to a Rush tour, and then are you aware, for a young sound engineer, how do you prepare to engage on by now, Rush is a well-established progressive rock band.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a huge Rush fan. I mean,
you were good. That's a good question.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the. I mean, I tell people this all the time, and you know, it sounds convenient at times, but I mean, I am the story of the absolute Rush punter that got the gig mixing the band. I mean, I'm that guy. I mean, I saw every tour up until the time I went to work for them. I had every record. I mean, I was a Rush fanatic, no doubt about it. I mean, it was the dream gig for me. It was totally.
Wow, that's incredible.
So, you know, and the way you connect the dots to Rush is really strange. I mean, I ended up you know, you got to plant the seeds with it all the way back to me working for Alice Cooper, who was also a huge fan. I mean, I was a huge fan of. The very first concert I ever went to was
that
Alice
is
Cooper.
quite a way to start your concert life. Was with that.
So, you know, through Alice Cooper, I meet Peter Mensch because Tesla is opening up for Alice Cooper. Peter is also Def Leppard's manager. So he gets me the Def Leppard gig. And then at some point in that late 80s segment, Rush is looking for a sound engineer, and Peter introduces me to Geddy. And, you know, Geddy comes down to a show, hears me mixing, and the rest is history, as they say, you know. So
So
but,
Getty actually has an interest in the quality of work that you're doing to provide sound for Rush.
Without question, they all do. They all did. Without a doubt. I mean, they understood, I think, what was at stake and what was going on, probably as much as anybody I ever worked with. I mean, everybody wants good sound, but not everybody understands what it takes to get it, and what they're going to need to contribute to it to get it. And those guys got that. I mean, their sounds were just so amazing, to work with.
You worked on the Counterparts tour, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that tour, and I remember
Same here.
I remember seeing it and thinking, like, this may be the best sounding stadium concert I've ever been to in my life.
Wow, thank you so much. That's awesome.
I'm going somewhere with this.
Okay.
A couple of years, like 3 years ago, I went to see Iron Maiden at a different stadium, and it sounded horrible. Like the balance was all off. I don't think they could hear each other. You could tell there were some miscues. What am I hearing in a well-mixed show like what you did on the Counterparts tour that is not happening at the Iron Maiden show?
Well,
maybe that's too broad a question, but I don't really have a technical background, but I'm sitting there. I've paid for my ticket, and it's like, my God, this sounds horrible. Why can't it be more like?
Well, and I'll grant you that's a pretty broad contrast there.
Oh yeah, totally, yeah.
But I think the thing that most people don't get, and I'll even put a lot of sound engineers don't get this to some degree, is that you've got to have a band that can play it and play it precisely to get it to sound good. Like, so much of it starts with the band performance and their sounds. That's why monitor mixing and all of this all these pieces of it are so important, because if those guys aren't communicating accurately on stage musically, it's not going to sound good.
Right.
Period. And so, after it gets to me, there's certainly an element of things that I have to do to it technically to get it to work and come out of a PA system in an acoustic space. I mean, I don't want to downplay that challenge. It's an enormous challenge. Yeah. But if you don't have something that sounds good before it ever hits the microphone, you got no chance. No chance. That was part of the secret of Supertramp. Russell and I talked about that a couple of times.
Yeah.
And it was certainly something that was kind of poured into me over my earliest days of working in the studio, where you start to realize, wow, until we get this to sound good before it ever hits the mic's just going to be a better or worse representation of a bad sound.
Part of the sense that I got to is that for a lot of people, if something doesn't sound good, what they do is they turn it up louder. Like, that'll fix it.
There's some truth in that. Yeah,
and it's like, no, that's exactly what you should not be doing. I used to play in a band a long time ago, and when we were recorded, we would always mix at a lower volume. Yeah. So you could kind of hear everything, hear the representation of everything.
But I mean, this was a little bit, I don't want to say it was a struggle with Rush, but we paid very, very close attention to it. There are times during the show it should be loud and it should be powerful.
Right.
And then there are other times in the show where it should have finesse and detail. Right. And, look, we've all seen the shows, and rock music is, notorious for this. Just hide behind the volume. You can hide an awful lot of things with volume.
Yeah. Also, when the sound, what I've learned too is when it sounds bad, the sound engineer gets a lot of blame. When it sounds great, there's silence. Right? Stan Miller told that to me, and I witnessed that at the Neil Diamond shows. After after the Neil Diamond performed, I couldn't tell you how many people came up to Stan and they were congratulating him on a wonderful job of sound quality. But Rush, and I think I was at one of those Maiden shows. It was maybe the last tour where something was up, because I went to Great Woods, and it was, or whatever the venue name is now, and it was something was up. But with regard to Rush, so Rush are at a level of standard unparalleled to any other band, right? I mean, I know the great bands you've worked for have big productions, big shows, but here we have this mammoth of a band with so much going on stage. We have video, we have explosions, we have props. It's almost like a circus. How do you prepare for something like that with a band that commands so much attention to its video, sound, and other production elements?
Well, I mean, I'll take you down the kind of map that was in place when I was there, and really, again, all of that starts with kind of the kind of discipline and the kind of preparation that they do as a band.
Yeah.
Where you can have that sort of thing, because what you get out of it in the end result is something that is really consistently night to night really good. I mean, exceptional. I mean, Rush's, in my opinion, Rush's forte was their consistency night over night over night. I mean, they could just knock it out out of the park every night,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that started with Neil, honestly. I mean, when we would go into rehearsal, I mean, I don't even know how I can verbalize this, but I remember one of the things I was startled by, certainly compared to what I had been involved with previously, is when I got to the Rush camp, was how long we rehearsed. I mean, Neil would come in 2 weeks, 3 weeks without the other band members, and just by himself work out those songs, anything that was going to be available to the set list, he would have down cold before those other two guys ever walked in the building.
Wow.
And it was a way for him to physically get in shape as well as musically get in shape, And I was there for all of that. And I just remember watching that thinking, wow, man, what is this going to be in a few weeks here when we get done with it? And then sure enough, the band, Alex and Ged would come in and they'd start getting their world together. And you would just hear this thing come together, man. And it just, I have such great respect for Howard Ungerleider, but what a dream to do lights for that band,
Really, yeah.
I mean, to be able to hear that music and hear them be able to execute it to that level of detail and just think, okay, I get to light that. I mean, that would just be spectacular. I mean, because it's carte blanche at that point. I don't mean in terms of money, but just in terms of creativity. And Howard showed that over his entire career with that band. I mean, those were visually some of the most incredible shows I've ever been a part of, for sure.
You're right. You're totally right. So, for fans that don't understand sound reinforcement for live rock and roll, what do you do? How do you get to the arena 3 days before? I mean, what are you doing? Are you overseeing load in? What is your job when you get to the arena, or even prior?
Well, the guy who sits in my seat, again, I'll maybe kind of take you from rehearsals on out. Once I hear the record, I'll kind of get a sense of what I want to do with it mixing wise. What approach did they take here? And again, they were pretty consistent over their career, I didn't really, I had an idea of what I was going to do with Neil's kit when I got there, and I had to kind of adjust it and morph it into what I was going to do sound wise once I got there. Whether I was going to distant mic it or close mic it, etc. And it was kind of a combination of those two things. But I have to be able to, as the front of house engineer, I have to be able to design a system that is going to be right for the size venues that we play and the size band. And the size band will kind of dictate what kind of console, kind of mixing console, and how big of a console I'm going to use. And the size venues will dictate what size PA system we're going to design and carry around with us, right? So those two metrics are in play all the time. And, if you're going to play everything from a club up to a baseball stadium, that requires carrying a lot of speaker systems, speakers, so, and capability there. And then, you have to help kind of put together a crew. The crew that's going to be out on those things is really important, not only from their technical skills, but from personality, because you're going to be living with them every single day, and that has to be part of the dynamic there. So on a given show day, once we're on tour, especially on Rush tours, there was no multi-day setups. Maybe for a stadium show we would have a multi-day setup, but you would start 6 a.m., 7 a.m. on show day, and then my job at some point is to guide what size PA system we're going to put up for the day, how it's going to be deployed, and then at some point, actually, it's called tuning the system, where you tune the tonality of the system and the directionality of the system to fit into the acoustic space properly. It's a challenge, especially at that point in history. Is still very, very challenging. We've got so many great, incredible tools for that today. I look back on it and go, God, I would have given anything
Yeah.
to mix Rush with what we have at our disposal today.
Yeah.
You know, oh, I would just have died for it. You know.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like a long day. What you were describing, starting at 6 a.m,
Yeah.
and and you would have to go all the way through, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
so-
you know, once you start a day, I mean, and I'm not to say that I was necessarily there at 6 a.m. in those days, because we have a rigger. You know, he understands where we're going to hang things. You know, at that point, we're getting rigging sorted out in the mornings, and you know that was pretty. I don't want to say standardized, but it was pretty well addressed, and he knew what we were going to be doing. Unless I would come to him and say, "Hey, Billy, we're going to make a change here." But that was going. I probably didn't hit the building till 9, 10 a.m. At that point, speaker trucks are being unloaded, and you know, it's really just down to me getting speaker system in place, making sure microphones are in place, and then sound check, where we're going to kind of see what it feels like and it sounds like in the building, and make any adjustments that we need to make before the audience gets in.
So you had like an 18-hour day instead of a 20-hour day.
My days, well, I mean, if we can see, yeah, I mean, I probably had a 12-hour day, 14-hour day.
It's a lot of work, and
the adrenaline. I mean, you must have been filled with adrenaline, right? I mean,
you are at showtime, for sure. And I mean, that's the juice. I mean, that's why all of us do it.
Exactly.
Honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that's certainly what pulled me out of the studio and into live. It's just much more in the moment. You know, there are no second takes.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to get it right from the first downbeat to the end. You got to do as much of it absolutely right as you can. There are no rewinds. You know.
So by this time,
that
the
juiced
band.
me. I love that part of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. By this time, the band's traveling by plane, and the crew is traveling by bus, right? There's
not always.
Yeah, really? Okay.
Certainly at that point. No, they were still traveling by bus a lot during that point.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and again, you know, this is where, you know, they kind of have the influence on you. At this point, it wasn't too long after
Neil was
really
bicycling at that point, right? Yeah. Okay.
That's where I was going. Yes. He was bicycling at the time, and very heavy. Yeah. And I remember just being. I'm still amazed by it and blown away by it, because I do a lot of cycling now. I mean, I'm a triathlete. I do all kinds of extreme fitness events, and part of that's because of Neil. I swear he put that in
inspired
me.
You. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And it was during this time where I started thinking, okay, you know, that's cool. But you know, like he would do a show, like we might have a 3 in a row or something like that. You know, we rarely had more than 3 shows in a row before we had a day off. But we would do a show. And then at night, he would get on the bus and start carb loading, you know, sleep for a couple hours. And then they would drop him off, you know, 60, 70, 80, 100 miles outside the gig. And he would ride into the venue.
Wow.
You know, a few more hours of sleep, get something to eat, sound check, show. Now think about show for Neil Peart, right?
Right. It's not.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a physical onslaught, you know.
Exactly.
So, you know, sound check, show, rinse, lather, repeat, you know, for the next day. It was just mind blowing. I remember seeing him come in just I mean, you know, your ass is dragging after sleeping all night,
right.
You know. You're like, how is this guy doing this, man?
Incredible, man. That's
How
so
is he
incredible. Well, I saw all of those tours, the Presto, Roll the Bones, Counterparts, and Test for Echo tours. I don't know why, just Presto, I love that album, and maybe some people don't as much, but I just remember those inflatable rabbits going up. But any of those tours stand out to you for any specific reason? Maybe sound quality, maybe just everything worked out perfectly. Maybe there was something on these tours that didn't happen so fluidly.
I mean, I'm confident enough to reveal all of that if you want. Certainly. Well, I mean, I'll always hold Presto very dear to my heart, because, you know, that was my shot. You know, that was my first time in the seat. So, I mean, I was really going after it, trying to make, and you know, I kind of had that luxury of being a Rush fan as well as the guy who was mixing the show. So I wanted the Rush fan experience to be unbelievable during that period, you know. And, you know, I had convinced him to kind of keep going with this thing, you know, where we were hanging speakers in the back of the arena, and we had, you know, joystick movements of audio around the audience, et cetera. You know, I was really into that. I wanted to really take that kind of next level with him. So that was really fun to mess with. So you know, those early tours were certainly the nearest and dearest to my heart technically. By the time we got to Counterparts, you know, we had moved up in some console technology and had some more capability there. That was fun. by the time we got to Test for Echo, this is an interesting story. I hope you find this interesting.
Yeah, of course.
I had already moved over and done some work with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers at that point, just because we were off for a period, year and a half, whatever, 2 years, and I had entered the Tom Petty camp. And during that time, I had started developing this technique called virtual sound check. And it was because we had the advent of low-cost 8-channel digital recorders at the time, 8-channel digital multi-track recorders, that you could cascade and make a digital multi-track recording machine. And on that element of Tom Petty, I started developing this idea of virtual sound check with a 56-track version of that. And I knew Rush was coming. I remember thinking, okay, Rush is coming. I'm definitely going to try this in Rush. I think it's going to work fantastic. Because I had kind of done a little bit of this in their rehearsals, but I had never taken it to the arenas to see if playback was going to work in the arenas to set for the show. Because that's the idea, just to kind of encapsulate it. The idea is that with multi-track tape, if you record the band playing and then go into playback at the console level and at the PA system level, it's just exactly as if the band is playing. You can make all the adjustments you need to make on the playback without the band there to get the room ready.
So where are you recording them from? Not from the studio album, right? But
no,
from
this is
live.
This is performances. So you would take at your first show, you would take rehearsal performances and use that.
Cool.
And then on the second night of the tour, you would use the first night's recording to set up for the second night, and it just cascades on down. Right. It works fantastic. I mean, it's the workflow that has changed the live sound.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Without a doubt. Because previous to that, the only time you ever got to work on audio in the building, people come in, was when the band was on stage or the audience was in the room.
So these are levels. You're checking levels in this way. It's levels, not tuning the room.
Everything. You can treat it just exactly as if you're next to the band.
Wow.
So I had kind of had that, and I thought, okay, yeah, I'm going to do that on Test for Echo. I'm going to actually take it out into the arenas and see how it goes. Now, as it turned out for that, it required a huge recording system because there are tons of inputs on that show, So, I mean, we built this huge ADAT system that we took out with us, and it failed miserably. It was just miserable. I mean, we, out of probably 60 or 70 show attempts, I think we probably got maybe 16 or 17 shows completely recorded with it. Because at the time, and again, I think we had done this one previous tour where we were recording every night, but we weren't using it for virtual sound check. But the cost of tape was so low at that point, we thought, wow, we need to start keeping these shows.
Yeah.
Because we're recording audience mics, all kinds of stuff with it. We just thought, these need to be recorded and put in the archive. And then someday, maybe not a year from now, but 20 years from now, 30 years from now, these are going to be gold.
Yeah.
Absolute gold. Somebody's going to remix these into product, right?
Yeah.
So when Test for Echo started, I was definitely in that mindset. I was thinking, okay, we're going to virtual sound check every night or every day, and we're going to archive the tapes. We're not going to record over them. We're just going to start archiving these shows, right? Well, it was going so bad technically. I mean, I don't want to say we put it down, but we just thought, well, we're not going to get very many complete shows here. And as it turned out, like I said, I think we got 17 or 18. Now, here's the context on this. The tour ends, and not long after the tour ends, Neil loses Selena. Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it shredded the band. I mean,
right.
I mean, as it should have. You know? I mean, you talk about guys that are a family. I mean, they were a true family. And at that point, I mean, the very real thought of we may have seen the last of Rush. That it might be done. I mean, that was a very real line of thinking. I mean, how is Neil ever going to come back from this? Yeah. Let alone that he's the lyricist.
Right.
How is a guy ever going to sit down and write a lyric right now? I mean, there's got to be a lot of catharsis take place here before this man is going to write any more lyrics.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, it was a very real thought that we may have seen the last of Rush. So the thought that came along with that was, well, these 17 or 18 recordings here that we got off the tour, those might be the very last Rush recordings. So that all of a sudden there was a whole lot more emphasis and focus put onto those recordings,
Mm-hmm.
And it breaks my heart even more now that we had so many failed recordings that we had to throw away. You know,
Bummer, man.
it's just a tragedy. But you know, a live album came out of those records, you know, or out of that recording. And you know, I mean, I wish we could have done a better job on it. I wish I could have done a better job. No we about it. I wish I could have done a better job on it. And I think I might have if I would have known that they were going to really, really be used in that setting and have that much emphasis put on them.
Do you mean just in terms of the technical problems you were talking about, or okay?
Yeah, I would have if I would have known we were gonna, you know, that was going to happen, and you know, all of those recordings would have been so valuable. I think we might have chosen a different way to do it, but
16
it
or
was
17
just a function of the time, you know, the technology of the time.
16 or 17 shows saved is not bad, I gotta say, and that's a good album, and it speaks for itself, and it sounds amazing, and you know, I mean, that sucks that happened, but you made lemonade, I would say.
Yeah, well,
you made lemonade out of it. Yeah.
So I mean, I think it sustained them for a little bit while they could kind of get together emotionally and everything to be able to even contemplate any sort of comeback.
Well, like what you were saying, when I read the news about what happened, I was like, well, that's it. There's no coming back from something like that. I was stunned when they did. But when I saw what had happened, I was like, yeah, that's got to be it. There's no way you can come back from something like that.
And then especially to lose his wife just a few months
terrible.
later than that.
Yeah,
I mean, it was just
horrific.
like, okay, this is done for a while, you know.
Yeah.
So what live albums are you credited for recording that exists?
I'm spacing the name of it. It's the one with the Tinker Toys on the front.
Different stages.
stages.
Yeah, that's a wonderful. I think I wore that CD out, man.
Yeah, that's actually that's the one that I meant when I said you got a good album out of it. Honestly, there are some versions of songs on it that I like better than the ones on the studio albums.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, I mean,
Dreamline and Analog Kid are on that. Yeah, just incredible. Yeah.
Well, you know, credit goes to Paul Northfield and those guys for really mixing a great record there. I mean, you know, it was painful.
Yeah.
Worthy.
Yeah, Neil, man, he's lived 1,000 lifetimes compared to the average Joe, you know, and he's a Renaissance man, and there aren't many people like him ever. You know, there's people
I've never met anyone like Neil.
Yeah, I mean, think about everything he's done. I mean, he's superhuman, you know, and this is why the conversation still continues, and a couple of schleps living somewhere in Somewhereville on a virtual screen here talking about it. Jesus Christ, do we have a life? But
yes, you do. And, you know, it's a lot sweeter knowing that you lived during the time of that guy.
That's true.
We mentioned this on a previous show, but I still talk about Neil like he's still here. I still talk about the band like they're still going, and I know that's intellectually, I know that's not the case. But
I go through that with both Neil and Tom, without a doubt.
Right.
I know Tom, man. You were with Tom for how long? So you were close with Tom. I mean, you're.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, man. Talk about some of that.
Nearly almost 25 years with Tom. So.
Wow, man. So sorry, man.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe when Tom
passed. He was my exit from Rush. I don't know how I can get this across. It broke my heart to have to leave Rush.
What happened? Can you open that can of worms, or is that a problem to talk about? Or?
No, I'm okay with talking about it. Sure. Yeah. I mean, you know, I have no shame in it for sure.
Yeah, of course.
You know, like I said, I had in between. It was probably Counterparts and Test for Echo. I think I had done a Tom Petty tour. And I had no inkling of, you know, what was going to happen in any way, shape, or form. And Test for Echo ends, and you know, there's a long hiatus for Rush, where they go for a long time without even contemplating a record or touring. So my mindset was, okay, this is kind of over.
Yeah.
So I focused all my energy back into Tom Petty, and we did a handful of tours, you know, a couple of records during that time, etc. So you know, I was pretty entrenched into that camp. And then when it was looking like Rush was going to gear back up again, I mean, I started to get pretty excited about it. And, you know, I had, you know, at that point, you know, technology had come a long way. We were into digital consoles at that point. Yep. I had designed up a sound system and console mechanism to be able to do surround sound in a concert setting.
Cool.
We were going to do 5.1 surround.
Wow.
For Rush. And I had that kind of sitting on the books ready to go. And, as luck would have it, of course, you know, Tom was going to go out right when Rush was scheduled to go out. So it was the first time in my career I've had this kind of conflict.
Yeah.
And, you know, you know, you got to know Tom as the guy to be able to understand this. As soon as Tom caught wind of that, his manager came to me and they offered me a huge sum of money. I mean, a big bag.
Do what you got to do. You do what you got to do.
Well, but it made the conflict even harder. You know, I mean, when Ged and I have talked about this in the past. You know, this is always the way I present it is like, you know, just because you get signed with the Yankees doesn't mean you're going to finish your career with the Yankees.
Right.
You know? I mean, sometimes you get pulled away. And, you know, at that time, I mean, for my position in the world in terms of what I did for a living, you don't turn down that kind of money.
Yeah.
I mean, it changed the arc of my family, of my career, everything. So you don't turn it down. But I went back to them and I said, look, match this in some way, you know, pay me over 10 years. I don't care.
Yeah.
I really want to come back and mix Rush. And they didn't, honestly, and it's not meant as a slam against them.
No, of course.
Businessmen as much as anybody. They didn't react very kindly to it, you know.
Yeah.
It was one of those kind of weird things.
I get it. But you had to do what you had to do. Also.
I had to do it. There was no
Of
way I
course.
was not going to do it. You know, like I said, I mean, it changed my entire family dynamic. It changed everything. You know?
So aside from Tom Petty's generosity, what was what was it like? What was the difference? Some of the maybe 2 or 3 biggest differences, aside from the music, obviously, of providing sound reinforcement for Tom Petty compared to Rush, because I've been to Tom Petty shows. It's like a karaoke. I mean, everybody's singing every lyric.
Yeah, no, it's
you
a
can't even hear him.
very, very different scene.
Yeah, man.
Both musically, band dynamic, everything.
Yeah.
Very, very different.
Yeah.
I mean, couldn't be more different, honestly.
What
Yeah.
And the Rush thing, I mean, that thing was like a big machine just building up and getting ready to go.
Yeah.
And then just going out and just,
Yeah.
I mean, night after night. The Petty thing was really fluid. I mean, really fluid. You might not know what songs they're going to play on a night when they walk on stage.
wow,
I mean, it was that kind of fluidity
Yeah.
at the time. And they both of those scenarios, I mean, I feel blessed to have been in both of them because they required diametrically different preparation.
Yeah, man.
Each one, you know. They were both amazing. I mean, I feel I've been the luckiest guy on the planet. I mean,
which
tons of
album
them.
did you start out with Tom Petty? Was it Wildflowers you started with him?
Wildflowers, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Such a great album.
That's like one of my top 10 albums of all time by
Well,
anybody.
you'll be happy to know I don't think I'm going to give the farm away here. You know, the Wildflowers box set is coming out.
Cool.
Not to hijack the conversation.
No, it's all good.
I've been waiting. I've been waiting for that.
Plays here because remember I was talking about doing those recordings and archiving.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we archived a lot of recordings off the Wildflowers tour,
Wow.
others, and they're going to get released into that box set.
Oh,
I
that'll be
contributed to the liner notes on that record. It's going to
Oh,
be
great.
Awesome, man. That's incredible. Yes, I know how close you were, and sorry for your loss. I can't believe that Tom Petty's gone. It's just horrible. So with wrapping up some of these questions here, with regard to the band and the personalities of the band, any fun little antics? Sometimes you hear, gone are the days of rock and roll myth and lore.
Yeah.
Kind of girls waiting at the door, cocaine off of amplifier.
Well, there were, I'm not for nothing, Rush was not a girls waiting at the door tour, I mean, it just was not. I mean, I'll tell you one funny story. I've told this before, but it is etched in my memory. It's just etched in my memory because it's so freaking funny.
Yeah.
So we were in some college town somewhere doing a big show. I mean, it was a big, basketball arena, hockey arena type show.
Yeah.
And we were probably, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes before the band walking on stage. And the crowd's getting a little more excited, a little more animated. And the band is waiting side stage, if I remember this right, because I could hear it on the radio. Craig was like, yeah, okay, they're ready to go. And on the floor seats, really right in front of me, probably 20 rows in front of me, this woman stands up. I'll call her a woman. She wasn't a girl for sure, but this woman stands up in this skin-tight white dress. Skin-tight.
Yeah.
Didn't miss a wrinkle. And she stands up and starts walking. She's going to go to the restroom, I'm guessing. And all of a sudden, the predominantly male crowd picks up on this woman walking and starts to cheer. And by the time she gets up the vom to get out into the aisleway around the arena where all the catering or the vendors are and stuff, it's a full-blown standing ovation.
Wow.
And on the radio, I can hear Craig saying, wow, the band is really juiced. They think this is going to be an unbelievable night. You know, the crowd is like, Craig, if you only knew what was going on out here right now. Please don't tell the band. You know, let them believe this is all about them. But this is about the girl walking up the stairs right now, you know?
That's hilarious.
That's so
Oh,
funny.
it was so good.
Oh my
It
God.
was so good.
So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, just that's kind of fitting for Rush.
Yeah,
that
totally.
the crazy story about them and women, they had nothing to do with it at all, and were not involved in any sense. Yeah, but I mean, there's no Rush mud shark story.
Right.
You know, there are no stories about them throwing TVs out the window of a
Well, there's
hotel
a few
room.
of those stories.
Really?
I mean, you know, I these were before my time.
Oh, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
but you know, Skip used to let me in on a lot of stories, and Howard used to let me in on a lot of these stories of stuff. I'll leave that for them.
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
I'll just
Hopefully they
say,
go on the
I'll just leave it with this. Alex and Neil and Ged collectively are the three funniest human beings I have ever been around, bar none.
Cool.
Bar none, man. They are off the chart funny.
That's cool.
And man, we did some pretty cool stuff on tour. I mean, their creativity was really, really fun on tour. You know?
Yeah, they seem that way. So do you have a favorite Rush album, Robert?
Favorite Rush album?
Yeah.
I'm certain I do. If you give me 2 seconds, I'll probably think through this and get it. I think for me, I just because it turned me so onto them, I think Farewell to Kings is my favorite record.
Great record.
It is a great record. Yeah, yeah.
It was just there was something happening with Neil on that record, both in terms of what he was playing and his sounds, and the arrangements of those songs that really, really sent me soaring with Rush. That was when I for me anyway, they moved to a different level. You know,
They really, I mean,
is also another one, man.
I
Either
love
one of
that
those
album.
two could do it for me.
Yeah,
well, I think that, like they really came into their own, I think, on 2112, and Farewell to Kings, I think, was kind of like they had taken what they did with 2112 and it sort of elevated it to
it
this
got
new
deeper, you know, in a weird way.
Yeah, right,
Like it was
exactly.
less. Please don't take this the wrong way. It was less animated, less comic book. You know, I mean,
No, I know what you mean.
There was
Yeah.
some real depth to what they were talking about.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, Robert, your industry is on pause, and you know, hopefully you're sustaining and keeping busy. What can people do to help? You know, people in your industry. Is there anything going on that people can do to help support those who are out of work? Or I'm going to put up a few links for. I know there's some funds going on that are supporting people in the industry, but what's your take on this? What's the future of the concert? What's happening here, man? You know,
I know it's not good. Honestly, it's hard to find the lemonade in the lemons here. But in terms of what people can do, the first and probably most important thing you can do is write to your congressmen or your senators. There are plenty of boilerplate things on the net to be able to do it, but contact them and let them know that this is an independent contractor industry that is going to die if we don't get some help. And, you know, I always marvel at how kind of hidden this whole industry is in terms of its economic impact on not only this country, but on the world.
Right.
I mean, you think about the things we bailed out in the world, you know, banking and auto industry, et cetera. Those pale in comparison to what the entertainment industry puts into the economy, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've got to get it going again. Excuse me, but I think it's a long road ahead of us. I hate to be dark about it.
Well, I think the entertainment
We're not
industry.
What's that?
Oh, it's not. Sorry. I think the entertainment industry is not viewed as a constituency in the same way people in manufacturing are, and that sort of thing. And a lot of people don't know, you know, like what you were talking about before, where if it doesn't sound good, they blame the sound man. If it sounds good, they credit
What a
the
great
band.
Yeah.
Most people, I think, don't know how many people are involved in putting
No,
on
they
a
don't.
show of that size. This is, you know, I mean, I couldn't even guess how many people were involved in getting just the Counterparts tour on the road and moving and that sort of thing.
You
and
just
those
think about all
those
the
people are all
industries in there.
Right,
I mean, you know, not only, I mean, you have unions, right, that contribute on a day-to-day basis. Like as a touring crew, we meet up with a union. You have catering companies. You have, you know, blah, blah. I mean, it's just the trickle down in it. You know, truck drivers, everything.
Sessions,
totally. Yeah.
It just goes away, and it goes to not, you know, what makes this so interesting and weird emotionally for all of us is that, you know, everybody's lost a job. Everybody's been fired at some point. But there was never the stress that went with, well, I'll just go over here and work, or I'm sure I'll get another
Right.
tour. There is nowhere to go to work right now. Nowhere.
Right.
Everything is at a standstill, unless you want to go to New Zealand maybe and tour. I think there's some shows going on down there. But the thing that probably gives me the biggest pause about it is that I think, and I've said this certainly about America, you will never see concerts come back before football
Right.
or baseball,
Right.
basketball. I mean, there's so much riding on them successfully doing it. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Certainly not big touring.
Yeah.
You might see some mid-level stuff come back where you can have small crowds, relatively socially isolated, probably outdoors. You might get away with that. But all of these kind of little stopgap measures, like drive-in concerts and hotel concerts, things
Yeah,
like
I
that.
saw the hotel concert.
I mean, they're interesting.
Yeah,
There's
but
no
not
way
the
they're
same.
sustainable.
Yeah.
They're not sustainable as a.
You
as
need
an
the crowds.
substantiation. So, it's all really down to that first promoter and the results that come from it. But I don't see us jumping the line there before sports. I just emotionally, I don't see that America allowing that to happen.
Yeah.
They certainly see, I think on whole, probably the United States for sure sees football as more essential than concerts.
Yeah.
Hard to admit, but probably true.
I think we see it as more essential than school. I mean, I think it's like no football, it's over. I'm out. That's
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Robert, so how can people learn more about your work? Where can they find out more about you? Do you have a website?
I do. Yeah, I have a robertscovill.com. It's incomplete in terms of all the, I've used it as kind of a tomb for all the articles I've ever written, all the articles I've ever have done about me, all the videos, etc. It's not complete yet, but it's all there.
a tomb.
As well as my my CV and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to go there, you can do that.
Okay, good.
Right now, I'm doing tons of online things just like this.
Yep.
I have this thing on Mondays called The Lab, which is it's a geek fest. It's a tech fest.
Cool.
On
Yeah.
live audio, concert sound, and how we do things. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm actually doing private sessions for sound companies where I train some of their staff, etc. On Wednesdays, I do a webinar for a company called Avid Technologies, which makes these consoles that we use, these mixing consoles, which I've been part of the design team on. And then on Fridays, I have this thing called the Back Lounge, which is a reference to the back lounge of a bus, where we, as a group of industry pros, we all get together and talk about the future of the industry. Where are we going? It's kind of a support group for our guys, right?
Yeah.
Our guys and gals. So we talk about everything in there, from the COVID thing to diversity in the industry, et cetera. We cover all of that. So that's my week in a nutshell. And maybe I'll use your platform here to announce this. I've been thinking about this for a long time, but I'm probably about 30 days away from doing it. On my website, I ran a blog post for quite a while called Live Vinyl Love Fest, where I would go on, and it's only has to do with live vinyl records. And I would go on and kind of review one and talk about its impact on my life, impact on the industry, impact on recording, all kinds of things. So I did that over a course of probably 30 records.
Cool.
I'm going to do an online version of that, where for an hour, I'm just going to pull a live vinyl record off of this shelf back here somewhere and put it on, and we as a group are going to sit down and listen to it and then kind of review it and give our thoughts on it and discuss it technically. So
Can't wait for that.
Yeah.
I'm going to start that probably in about a month. Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun because we're going to come at it from all the different angles, not just of how great it is musically, but how it was recorded, the people involved in the recording, all kinds of stuff. So,
Well, Robert, I
I'm
want
going to do those as kind of a video blog.
Cool.
Where can we find
go
out
ahead.
more about that? On your website? Will that be on your website?
That's where you'll get to it, and that's
Okay.
where I was heading with that. On my website, you'll see an ability to sign up for the mailing list, for mailing list invitations to the lab, the back lounge, etc. And I'm going to include Live Vinyl Love Fest on that before long. So once you're on one list, you're on them all.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, I want to thank you. This show is, of course, I've told you this before. Dan and I speak on it. We're just a couple of fans with some time on our hands, and
Guilty as charged.
and this show is for Rush fans, and what you've done today by kind of opening up that world is educated folks that might not know about what sound reinforcement is, especially how important it is to a band like Rush. The quality of their performances owe a lot to how they sound live, and you're responsible for so many great tours and experiences for so many. So thanks for letting us take a peek inside the magic. We appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure, man. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah.
I was very
Absolutely.
honored to have you invite me in. That was great.
Yeah, awesome. All right, I'll connect with you later on at some point, and I'll send you some links to the show or to the podcast. And Dan, anything left for you?
Thank you very much for coming on. Thank you for having a lot of interesting stuff to say that I had not considered before. And, best of luck to you getting through all this. And I'm still optimistic that we will come out the other end on this and get our lives back.
We will. I mean, if anything, what this is going to give us is an appreciation for live music.
Oh yeah.
Having to go without it for so long.
Yeah.
Because the world will not exist without live music. We will not replace that shared experience of being in a big building and watching something like that take place. There's no replacement for that. There's no technical replacement for that.
None.
True.
So it will come back.
You know what I just realized is that just the fact of talking about Rush in such detail on a general scheme is geeky. But talking about Rush in the format we're talking about, we went beyond geek here. I mean, we really transcended geekdom.
Oh, sure.
With really, so we're really digging into new territory here, Dan. With we're pushing the threshold.
It's like this was like the Mount Everest of geekdom, and we scaled the summit. And I think you were our Sherpa guide who brought us to the top of it. So thank you.
You did. That's so awesome. That's so awesome. All right, Robert, man, take care of yourself and your family, man. Thank you so much, man.
John, Daniel, thank you, man. Appreciate it, guys.
Peace. Take care.
Yeah, we'll see you. Thanks.
So,
wait a minute. Okay, we're good. Yeah, that was good. That was incredible.
That was great. Yeah, good man.
A great man who's done a service for us Rush fans.
I'll say, yeah. I didn't even know it when I saw the Counterparts tour that I would, 26 years later, I would get to meet the guy who mixed it, and gave me a pleasant experience where I didn't feel ripped off. So good.
Yeah, right. And I'd like to think that I do my homework, but I guess I didn't realize how much of a fan Robert was. And that is special because not every sound engineer, every roadie, every crew member is a fan of the group. They're there to work, and it's part of the experience, the live arena experience. But boy, given the fact that he was such a fan and was able to be responsible for their music in that way is really a special thing.
I probably, if I had been in his position, I probably would have blown it because I would have gotten just like so excited and been such the excited geek person that I would have passed out or ruined it in some way. So it is good that it was him and not me.
This is why you're not a Rush sound engineer, Dan, or ever where we'll be.
One of several reasons, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely, man. Well, this concludes another wonderful episode of Two Guys Talking Rush. This also is part of a series which we are calling Behind the Lighted Stage, which we take a look at some of the details, stories, and technologies that drove the live Rush band experience. And we've talked about this. They'll be intermittent, but this is part one of a series that will where part two might show up in an episode in the future, where we can interview these people who made stuff happen for us live. How many fans were introduced to Rush or loved Rush even more after seeing them live? I've met almost every Rush fan I've ever known. I love the album. It got me, it drove me enough to buy a ticket to see them. And then after I saw them, then I was convinced that Rush were something really special. And these are the people that made them special, man. I mean, Rush could not have done it without the quality work that these crews put into it, from front of house to lighting to video to everything else, you know. So
the guys in the band always wanted to give them credit too, and always wanted to make sure that people knew,
yes,
like, it's not just the three of us. We would not be here without these guys and these guys. And, you know, that's it gets back to them being mensches, as we said with Donna on the first episode.
Exactly,
you know,
exactly.
It's good.
That's right. Yep. And also they're visionaries. They're thinking about the aesthetic, the quality of the live experience, which transcends just a rock and roll band on stage. Right. It's a visual thing. It's something to be absorbed and experienced in a kind of this cognitive, this deeper thing, right? I mean, I can't tell you. One of the first times I saw Rush was I think it was the first time I saw Rush on the Hold Your Fire tour. Just in looking back at that, how primitive it is compared to concert technology now with regard to visuals, is that screen with the animations. You know, they hired an animator. It was sequential. It lined up with some of the music, like Force 10. I think about Force 10 and the video behind that when they have the abstract characters playing. And I was just so enamored by that. And now it's just you look at it when you look at the Show of Hands live video. It's kind of goofy, but to me then it was very, very powerful, and it's still powerful to me. But you know, this is what Rush did. You know, this is the quality and the standard that Rush strove for, and incredible.
Even if it hasn't aged well necessarily, it was state of the art at the time. You know, like they took it to absolutely right up to the edge of what was possible. And you know, at the time when they were doing that tour, I'm sure that was absolutely as far as the technology would allow. Yeah. They were never intimidated by technology, and they were never intimidated by change.
Right.
So they never had a problem with, like, okay, we'll change up the set this time, we'll do this time, you know, because I think they understood also that there were people coming back to see them every time, and they wanted something new. So
yeah, and none of it was goofy. I mean, there was no mini Stonehenge or anything, you know, but but you know, it was always at a level of art.
Yeah,
they brought a level of artistic value to the. And they need to be noted for that, I think, is the quality and artistic quality that they brought to the table. Well, this concludes Two Guys Talking Rush. Dan, the delightful Dan Buxman. I won't say it again. The delightful, nobody ever.
You can say it every day.
The delightful Dan Buxman. I'm John Kane, and thank you for tuning in to Two Guys Talking Rush. What can we say? Rush rules, folks.
Yep.
Peace out.
Guys are talking, rush two guys talking, rush two guys are talking, rush two guys are talking, rush two guys.
Live music inspires millions around the world, but the concerts we all enjoy wouldn't be possible without the countless crew members working behind the scenes. As COVID-19 puts concerts on pause, we want to extend a helping hand to the touring and venue crews who depend on shows to make a living. Crew Nation was created to do just that. Crew members are the backbone of the live music industry, and we hope you'll join us in supporting them through this temporary intermission until we can once again unite millions around the world through the power of live music. Crew Nation is powered by Music Forward Foundation, a charitable 501c3 organization that will be administering the fund. Live Nation has committed $10 million to Crew Nation, contributing an initial $5 million to the fund, then matching the next $5 million given by artists fans, and employees dollar for dollar. Please support Crew Nation at www.livenationentertainment.com/Crew Nation.